It's 150 years since the first South Sea Islanders from Vanuatu, the Solomons and other parts of the Pacific were brought to Australia to build the sugar industry. Australia is the third largest raw sugar supplier in the world, an industry partially built on the hard labour of South Sea Islanders. Around 60,000 came to Queensland in the 1860s, many against their will. Now South Sea Island descendants in Australia want a Commonwealth apology and more recognition of their part in our colonial past. This special report from Charmaine Ingram.
This reenactment reminds us of what happened 150 years ago. Thousands of Vanuatu Islanders were loaded onto ships, some willingly, some tricked, and many were abducted. It was known as Blackbirding, Australia's slavery past.
About 50 to 60,000 Pacific Islanders were brought into Queensland to work as labour on sugar plantations and farms mainly between 1863 and 1904. They really, when you stand back and look, they're the most disadvantaged immigrant community in Australia. They've been here 150 years, but when you put together that the initial community was partially kidnapped, 15-20% of them, no other community fits that. They were worked in what you can only describe as semi-slave conditions, and the conditions on the boats coming over fall into that category. 30% of them, an astounding 30%, died from lack of immunity to common diseases.
These fields claimed the lives of thousands of Melanesians as they tried to pay off their indenture bonds. A sugar farm owner at the Royal Commission into the cane industry in 1889 shed some light on why South Sea Islanders, or Kanakas, were taken.
It seems to me the hotter the weather, the better the Kanak can work. In the heat, a white man can do nothing but drink tea and can't eat.
The Islanders were paid £6 a year. That's like working for about $20 a week today. In 1901, with the emergence of the White Australia policy, thousands of immigrants, including South Sea Islanders, began to be deported, despite starting families here. And the Pacific Island Labourers Act was unique, designed to target a specific ethnic group for deportation. Those people and others who died working in the fields had the wages owed to them put in a public trust.
The money was supposed to be returned to the families next of kin in the islands on the ships that were going over. In fact, the Queensland government only returned about 15% of the money, kept 85% of the money, which they used to help run the administrative system around the labour trade, and then eventually in 1901 gave the money to the Commonwealth government to pay for the deportation. So the wages of deceased islanders paid for the deportation of thousands in the 1900s.
But not all returned home. The Commonwealth allowed 1,500 people to stay, while another 1,000 escaped into the bush. Their legacy survives through the 40,000 descendants here today, like Shireen Malamu and Imelda Davis. They now want federal government support for their disadvantaged families.
It's not common knowledge to white Australia. And I think Australia should grow up and start telling the beginnings of this country and what occurred with its Aboriginal people, South Sea people, whatever. But they need to tell about a slave trade.
It's a sad story, but at the same time, I'm proud of the contribution that our families have made to the fabric of this nation, the economical base,